y'all, it's Kate from the Literary Apothecary and welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing the round 3 and these are the top 32 books that I read in 2023. I am so excited. These get harder and harder as they go along, but they get more and more exciting as we go along too, and we narrow it down. So this is our top 32. Pay attention because these are some of the top books that I read last year. Out of 110, we're now down to 32. Amazing progress. Now, if I did this correctly, each one of these books you should have heard about either in the last video or the video before that. So either in round 1 videos or round 2. So I will try not to go into too much detail about these because we've heard about these before and it would make this a really long video if I went into detail about all of them. So this is going to be, hopefully if I can restrain myself, mostly just like quick fire answers. So starting off, we have Labyrinth's Heart versus Yellow Sky Revolt. This is such a hard one. Labyrinth's Heart was The Rook and the Rose. Yellow Sky Revolt was historical fantasy. I've got to give this to Labyrinth's Heart because that book I love that series so much. Yellow Sky Revolt is near and dear to my heart. Historical fantasy by Baptiste Pinson-Wu, who has a new book coming out, I believe in February. The Undead Samurai, which I beta read and was absolutely blown away. I love that book so much. Our next matchup, The Shadow Rising versus City of Blood. This one I'm gonna give to Shadow Rising because I think if I remember correctly, that's one of my favorite Wheel of Time books so far. City of Blood is part of the Nightmare Chronicles series that I love, but that was one that I didn't like as much as the others, so I'm going to bet money on my terrible memory and hope that The Shadow Rising was one of the Wheel of Time books that I liked more. Oh, this next one is so hard. Shattered Spirits versus A River Enchanted. This one, as much as I love Cal Black and I loved the Shattered Spirits novella, I have to give this one to A River Enchanted because, y'all, I'm obsessed with that book and I have it on my February TBR to read book 2 in that duology thanks to my patron Kate, who was chosen as the patron of the month for next month. I have to go with A River Enchanted. Next up we have Nightwatch versus No Heart for a Thief. This one goes to No Heart for a Thief. I don't remember a lot from Nightwatch, as I've said before, but I can't forget about No Heart for a Thief. Like, that book is ingrained in my head, as well as its sequel, which I think we have coming up in a couple picks. Nightwatch was a Terry Pratchett City Watch book, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that whole series, but for me, there's just something about James Lloyd Doolin's series that just puts it just a little bit above Nightwatch. Thursday Murder Club versus The Bleeding Stone. I'm gonna go with The Bleeding Stone for this one. That is another book that just stayed in my brain for a very, very long time. And I'm actually reading book 2 of that series next month and then the arc for book 3 in March. So I can't wait to see where this series goes. Thursday Murder Club was amazing. I loved it. It's about a bunch of old people solving a murder and it was just absolutely cozy and hilarious and fantastic, but does not beat out The Bleeding Stone for me. Next up we have My Hungry Friend versus Legacy of the Brightwash. This one is going to Legacy of the Brightwash, which is another book I am completely obsessed with. My Hungry Friend was a self-pub book by Daniel Barnett that was a horror, post-apocalyptic short book. Not quite novella length, I don't think, but short enough that you could read it within the week, probably just a couple days if you aren't reading 5 books like I am. It was just a little too weird for me. This next one might be the hardest one yet. A Storm of Swords versus No Safe Haven. Wow, okay, Storm of Swords was my favorite book in the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. R. Martin. No Safe Haven was the sequel to No Heart for a Thief by James Lloyd Doolin, and I liked that even more than I liked No Heart for a Thief, and I have become a big cheerleader of that series. And This is a hard one for me. Okay, I'm gonna give this one to A Storm of Swords, mostly because that book just completely blew me away, and after I read A Storm of Swords, the books after that were amazing and incredible, but didn't feel like they could hold up to that book in this series. No Safe Haven, you guys know I love that, but I did just pass on No Heart for a Thief into the next round, so James Lloyd Doolan is still represented in our next round after this. Next up, we have Thrice versus Lullaby. Ooh, this is a hard one too. I loved Thrice and that little boy, Leaf, I believe his name was. But Lullaby was one of my favorite books in the Nightmare Chronicles series, and it brought in my favorite character in that series. So I think I have to go with Lullaby for this one, but if you have not read Thrice by Andrew Meredith, you need to go read it now. Oh, these get so hard. Wistful Ascending versus A Game of Thrones. I loved A Game of Thrones, that book 1 in A Song of Ice and Fire series. And I loved Wistful Ascending. Okay, I'll tell you what. Since I know I've already passed on A Storm of Swords for the next round, and I liked that one more than I liked A Game of Thrones, I'm going to give this one to Wistful Ascending and Ronan, our superhero, because that book was just so unique, and that was a really hard one for me. I'm going to be thinking about that one for a long time. Holy cow, here comes another one. These are all so hard. Nightfall versus Silhouette in the Shadow. Nightfall was book 1 in the Nightmare Chronicles series. And I read those first couple sentences and I said, wow. I had to read them again. I think I read them like 3 times before I moved on. And then I read them out to John because I was trying to describe it to him and I just couldn't do it justice. Silhouette in the Shadow was a superhero found family book 1 book by Delaney Andrews, and I loved it so much. But I think I have to give this one to Nightfall because that book changed things for me. The Return of the Knights versus the Two-Faced Queen. Okay, this one is hard, but not as hard as some of the others. This one goes to the Two-Faced Queen because that was my favorite book in that series. And that whole series did different things than I ever expected. Whereas The Return of the Knights was good, but it had a lot of your common tropes in it. So it wasn't necessarily very different for me. Just a couple left. We have A Dance with Dragons versus Buzzard's Bowl, which is ironic because one of John Palladino, the author of Buzzard's Bowl's writing inspirations was George R. R. Martin, the author of A Dance with Dragons. I think I'm going to give this one to Buzzard's Bowl because Dance with Dragons was really good and made me want to read the next books, but we don't have the next books yet. And like I said before, I've already passed on A Storm of Swords, so I feel like I can be safe and pass on one that we haven't passed on yet. The Chase Begins versus Lily. This one goes to Lily. Definitely the last book in the Nightmare Chronicles series. That might be the easiest pick so far. The Chase Begins was a novella I read for the Sphinx Championship series, and it was good, but it felt like the ending was rushed a little bit. I felt like, oh, okay, we're already there. What happened in all of this time? Felt like it was condensed to try to make that novella format, and Lily just blew me away. Definitely the best book in this series so far. Speaking of this series, our next matchup is Sleepwalking versus Grave Peril. I'm going to give this one to Grave Peril because I know we have at least 2 books from the Nightmare Chronicles series already passed on to the next round. And Sleepwalking, while I loved it and I loved that whole series, was not my favorite book in that series. Grave Peril was a Dresden book. I want to say number 2 or number 3, and I've loved everything I read in the Dresden series. I think everything has gotten a 5-star rating for me. I just love it so much. Next up, we have just 2 more matches left. Yes Please versus Phased. Okay. As much as I loved Amy Poehler's memoir, especially the audiobook version of it, and it gave me what I needed at the time, I'm going to pass Phased on to the next round. Phased by Victoria Tekken, Tori Talks. on YouTube. I loved this book so much, and I can't wait for us to get book 2. We don't often get books about just werewolves, and this book was a coming of age supernatural story about young werewolves in like high school, college age, and I just loved everything that Tori Tekken did with this book. And our last matchup is Conspirata versus the Hexologists. This one by far goes to the Hexologists by Josiah Bancroft. I love that book so much, and I love our handbag dragon. He steals the show, and it's just so good. So that is our top 32. We're getting closer. As always, let me know in the comments below, what choices were you surprised by? What choices do you agree with? What choices would you have made differently? As always, my Patreon and my Discord information will be in the description below. Come and join us and talk about these decisions with me. Keep reading, and I love y'all to the moon and back. Bye.